Good morning, and happy first day of spring. Yes, we finally made it through this horrible long winter. So welcome everybody to the Parent-to-Parent Summit, Beyond the Bake Sale, Engaging Parent Leaders in Jewish Day Schools. My name is Irene Larasandalo, and for the past 2 years, I've had the pleasure of directing the Parent-to-Parent initiative of the Jewish Education Project. What an exciting day. For the first time, we have over 70 day school parents and community leaders from all around New York, New Jersey, Connecticut, together to envision a new model for parent leadership in Jewish day schools. So how did we get here? The Parent-to-Parent initiative launched 2 years ago, and I've had the privilege of meeting and working with over 150 day school parents from over 14 day schools. Along with so many of you in this room, day school parents develop new skills in blogging and social media with the goal of sharing their experiences of their children and families in their day schools. After each meeting, I felt a little more motivated, inspired, and energized by your passion, commitment, and creativity. Day school parents are an extraordinary resource to the day school community. When we are engaged, we become the greatest proponents for Jewish day school education. We look to our Jewish day schools as more than just educational institutions. We look to our schools as a place of community. Parents are involved in their children's education in different ways, even recognized within our popular culture. So to start our conversation today, I want to take a minute to show you a clip from one of my favorite shows on TV right now.
Great first day. I actually can't, sweetie, not today. I just got to sign up for the volunteer stuff. Sorry.
Excuse me.
Love you.
Excuse me, you're Sydney's mom, right?
Yes, I'm Sydney's mom. I'm Julia.
I forgot my kids' lunches. Could you just wash them for 1 minute? I gotta run to my car.
Not today. I can't.
I'll be back in like 20 seconds. Thank you. You time me. Thank you.
Hi, guys. So, you excited for your first day of school? Good. You know my daughter, Sydney, right? I'm her mom. Yeah.
Hey, Jules, you better get inside. You're going to get screwed. You got to get your sign up.
I know. And there he is.
There we go.
Hey,
Thank you so much.
Yes.
We gotta get in there. My wife said not to be late for the
sign-ups.
Yes,
I know.
exactly. All right, I love you guys. I gotta get past you. I gotta go. I gotta hurry. I don't want to get stuck.
So
with that
I just
green
don't want
police gig.
No, yes, the sustainability. That's what I don't want either.
Yeah, sorry. Oh, sorry.
Well, if anything, you should get sustainability because you're the one who forgot the lunches. So.
God, you're in good shape.
Oh, thanks. Hey. Oh, God.
Sometimes the late bird gets the worm.
No.
Join sustainability.
Come on. Sustainability.
Well, at least we're stuck together, huh?
Many of us have taken roles such as these in our schools, providing valuable services that offer important and often critical supports to the function of our day schools. We need parents to lead bake sales, staff the recycling committee, sometimes to perform a variety of administrative tasks that support our professionals and students and reduce costs in these economically challenging times. While we understand that this service is very important, what other role might parents take? During the past 2 years in Parent-to-Parent, we've asked the question, what is the model for parent engagement and leadership in the 21st century? In tackling this question, I find it helpful to draw on some definitions of terms put forward by Larry Ferlazzo, a high school teacher and a writer for a popular education blog. So he writes, the involved parent is one who's generally directed towards completing tasks selected by the school staff, or the parent may be a client who receives services and information. The engaged parent is considered a leader or potential leader who is integral to identifying vision and goals, and he or she encourages others to contribute their own vision to that big picture and helps perform the tasks that need to be achieved in order to reach these goals. So we want to explore a couple of questions. What are some of the stories that we will hear today that can help us re-envision our role in our children's day schools, becoming engaged parents who express leadership as opposed to clients or customers of a school?
It would be really simple today to sit here convening this group of amazing people together to sit and talk about the challenges of Jewish day school leadership, to talk about parent involvement, to talk about the reasons why parents are or not involved. We could also talk about some data could collect some data from all of you about the reasons why parents have not been engaged in the past and why the future might look different. We've actually chosen to explore a conversation today that will look very, very different. And I think really that is rooted in the notion that we here together believe in the power of conversation and the power that conversation can have in changing our future and changing our children's future. We believe that the voices of parents and educators together in conversation will enable us to fulfill two very specific goals. First, we really hope to facilitate, build, and appreciate conversation. You're going to hear a lot about conversation. You're going to have a lot of conversations between two specific partners in this work, already those of whom who were already mentioned, parents and educational leaders, right? The parents who are here, the parents who are not able to be with us today, we care about the involvement and the engagement of other parents in our child's Jewish education. Educational leaders, day schools, and the funders who are able to be here with us today, we work to engage Jewish parents in learning and in experiences that shape their own child's experiences and learning. Second, we're here to celebrate and appreciate our success, right? The conversations that have unfolded through the Parent-to-Parent Initiative over the last 2 years really mark a significant success, and we're here to celebrate those successes and to learn from those successes, and really to use those as examples to generate future success. You saw that we're on Instagram, we're on Twitter. Please, I want to encourage you to share this conversation outward today. I really want to encourage you, if you feel comfortable, to take out your cell phones or your iPads or your computers and to share what we're learning here with those who are not able to be here today. This will share the big ideas of our learning, but even more importantly, share with people who are not able to be here. For example, the pool of working parents who care so deeply about their children's Jewish education in the Jewish day school context, who unfortunately couldn't be here, and anyone else across the community, both in the tri-state area and even beyond, who are fascinated by this conversation and who really wish that they could be a part. So take a moment, really, I won't be offended. Grab your phones, tweet, share on Facebook, feel free to take pictures, whatever you'd like, help to broaden the conversation. I'm really here today in a dual capacity. I am both an educator and a parent. And for those of us who are here as parents, we come here for a very specific reason. We're here not just because of our children, but because we care about our children's experience and our family's experience within the context of a community, our school community. For those of us who are here as educators, our involvement in this dialogue is really born out of a belief that educators and parents in partnership will strengthen our schools and will therefore strengthen our children's educational experiences and their participation in their communities. First, we'd like to invite our panelists to share a story or give an example of true parent engagement, what true parent engagement looks like and feels like, and then also to talk a little bit about how they knew it worked, right, or was working, what it looked like, what it felt like, and how it was working. Can we begin with Veronica?
Sure.
Thanks.
Happy to begin. Thank you for the wonderful introduction. I'm going to talk a little bit about some greening initiatives at my old school. I got involved in the green team because it was really important to me that my sons who are growing up in the city get to interact with nature a little bit more and really get their, even get their hands dirty. I thought that was important for all of the students at the school. The Green Team had the support of the Isabella Friedman Greening Fellowship. I need to point that out, for which we're very grateful. But critical for what I want to say is that what we did with that support was completely up to us. When we had our first meeting at our house over the summer, we came up and brainstormed 20, 30 ideas, and we were going to change the world. I mean, we had just this great excitement about what we were going to do. When we came back down to earth and we narrowed it down to 2 or 3 things that were really important to us, we got to work, and it was really hard work. There were a lot of constituencies that we had to deal with and to get involved. You know, the teachers, the administrators, of course the students and the community and the parent body. Funding was also an issue, so we made sure we got some grants. There was, over the course of the process, there were some very frustrating points, and that's something, you know, to go to how the process felt. It didn't always feel great. There were some very frustrating points. We seemed to be turning our wheels and not going anywhere. But I've learned from talking to people and from being in this experience and others that that might be a necessary part of the process. As the school and as the parents sort of try to figure out where they're going together, and they need to have this conversation, and it might be very frustrating. But you have to sort of get through it. Our greatest success was with the science teachers. They were really excited to have more materials for their curriculum, for their classroom. And we really, the engagement with them was just really true collaboration. We were creating something completely new with them. And I knew it worked when one of the science teachers brought little kids down to plant in our garden, which was really a bunch of woolly pockets on a chain link fence. And I was stood there looking at them, and it felt so normal. Like all the work and all the frustration just fell away. And it was like, this is what was meant to be. So, amazing.
So I want to tell a little bit of a different kind of story about a moment of sort of interior change or transformation for me. I got to school already interested in educational processes as a prospective kindergarten parent, and I spent a lot of time looking at the schools I was visiting and asking their teachers a lot of questions. And right away, I started going to parent association meetings and asking lots of curricular questions. And quite quickly, I joined the board and got involved in education committee. And when my kid was probably not yet in the second grade when it became clear that I might be asked to take a little next stage of leadership, and I went to the Page Assembly in Boston. I was invited to the Page Assembly, and on the way out the door, my husband, who's a person of great wisdom, put his hand on my shoulder and he said, "Elisheva, try to remember you're a lay leader." And it really stuck with me. It became sort of a shorthand for me for remembering that there's actually multiple kinds of leadership and contribution in the school. And that when we use the language of transformation and change and building new things, sometimes those really are actually a nicer version of fetch. Actually, they're like Lashon Sagina horror, right, for fetching. And what they really mean is, what we had before kind of stunk. But now we're gonna have something awesome. And in fact, what we actually want is a partnership between multiple people who are doing excellent kinds of work, and none of whom are responsible for all the kinds of work. And what the conversation that emerged for me actually at that assembly in Boston was with many other lay leaders, many of whom were parents, although not all, and many professionals, many of whom were parents, although not all, and who were thinking about a range of kinds of support that the school needed, and what were the ways that they could be in chavruta together or in teamwork together. And that really changed my understanding. It was a moment of my getting more, that I wouldn't be more involved, more engaged, better engaged if I actually was pushing in to tell teachers what to do differently in their classroom. That wasn't actually the goal for me. It was to think, what settings does lay leadership build? What settings do I, as a parent lay leader, build communally and structurally that support the work of those teachers? When a junior teacher understands the mission intensely in the big picture way and is delivering it in the classroom in the same way a lay leader who's coming in through the door of the parent association is somebody supporting that person to think at the sort of in a big picture mission oriented way in their little place. So the question isn't really, am I past the bake sale? Is what's the importance of the bake sale? How does the bake sale contribute? Am I part of a larger whole? And it was really talking to a lot of other parents and who were lay leaders and who were professionals, thinking about the range of skills that they brought, that helped me to think about bringing mission down into the small volunteerism in the same way that mission comes down into the small classroom task, so that the little work that I was doing could be connected to the bigger work that I was doing.
One of my one of the comments that speak most to me about personal change comes from a relatively well-known, important 20th century Jewish philosopher, Bob Dylan, who wrote in 1964 about personal change, that I was so much older then, and I'm younger than that now. I had been in Jewish education already when I became the head of a Jewish high school in San Francisco for about 15 years after being in rabbinical school, and had a very firm idea about the role of parents in Jewish day schools, very similar to the role that was laid out here in the context of involvement. I valued it and I respected it, and the parents who went along, who took the time to be engaged in the school, one in sending their children, but in my mind as customers of the school, or perhaps volunteering as servants of the school in important but technical ways. That all changed for me when I met Brenda. Brenda was a founding parent of our high school, and she came to me with what I thought was a particular concern, her own agenda item, which was healthy eating. She was bothered with the vending machines. It was all potato chips and cookies and junk food. And that's all we were serving. We didn't have a lunch program in our new school. The concern she had was that all the kids that she was learning were essentially eating their lunch through those vending machines with Coke and with chips, stuff like that. And that was a concern of hers. I met with her about it, and I saw it on a list of concerns, and really not a very important one in the context of building a large, trying to build a large Jewish community high school. It seemed to me like a particular interest, and when she pressed it, it became a particular fetch. I was changed by this experience because of Brenda. She not only came to help me to understand the importance of the issue, I think more importantly, she said to me, notice that Rabbi Horowitz, I really like you and respect you. I chose to send my child here. And even though he, by the way, wouldn't care at all, he likes eating chips and drinking Coke, I'm not talking about him. I sent him here because of the mission and vision that you put forward, that a great Jewish high school cares about the whole child. And honestly, you're not addressing that. When you're putting my concern in the side point here, you're not hearing my bigger point, that it's not merely about healthy eating. I'm concerned about that we are fulfilling the mission and vision of the school as you put it forward. And that's the reason why I sent my child, that's the reason why other parents sent their children, because ultimately we believe in that mission, and we believe in that vision, and we believe in those goals. And I'll tell you, I couldn't simply put her concern on the list of many small technical concerns anymore, for I heard Brenda's voice differently. She wasn't coming merely with a point to raise, let alone with a kvetch. She was talking my language and my area of concern, which was the mission and vision and larger goals of our Jewish high school. And it struck me in a way that truly bothered me, which my mother always told me that's something to listen to. And I came to build a relationship with Brenda, and we sat down and talked about it. On a technical issue, what was important that ended up leading that discussion about vending machines into producing a healthy vegetarian kosher soup salad sandwich bar. I'm happy to send you links on that because on a technical level, individual program level, it's interesting and was important for our high school. The more important aspect of this story, really, for me, and what changed me as a Jewish day school professional and as a Jewish educator, and my view, my understanding of the role of parents, was that Brenda didn't approach me merely as a parent with a concern. She approached me as a partner. She approached me by speaking the language of mission, vision, and goals, not talking about my child, but our children. I realized that's parent leadership. And although I wanted to hear her voice and her concern, we spoke often, as with all parents, about her particular child's needs and concerns. When she came to me with her parent leadership hat on, then I knew we were talking about the good of this school and the future of this school, and of the enterprise of Jewish education altogether. And I came to understand that that's the incredible opportunity and the responsibility, I think, that parent leadership can offer in Jewish day schools, which we don't often leverage. I was not prepared that way. I, like Bob mentioned, came to think about Jewish parents as being involved. But I came to embrace them and feel committed to them as engaged leadership. And that is really where not only I was changed, but I like to believe she had an impact on all the students and parents, all the schools and programs in which I've worked, and will be again in the future. So I thank Brenda every single day for the real success point that Sarah references in the school was not a healthy lunch program. The real success was a culture of parent leadership where I did not make any significant decision along with our board of trustees without consulting that group. I saw them and came to rely on them as very important partners in planning and setting goals and fulfilling the mission of our Jewish high school.
So quarterly at Yerusha, the family-driven experiment in Jewish education that we run in the Princeton area, quarterly we meet together. And when I say we, we're run by families, by the parents, and we also enlist the help of the teams to run Yerusha, and even from the very foundation and creation of Yerusha. So we started with the vision and the mission, but that vision and mission came directly from families. And we started asking them not what vision or mission do you want for a family-driven experiment in Jewish education, but rather, what is your own vision for Jewish education for your family? And then together we try to find commonalities amongst these families. What do we want? Why are we interested in Jewish education for our families? We try to start from the very beginning. Why are we here? Why is this area of Jewish education so interesting to us? Why are we so passionate about it? And from there we try to build a mission and vision. And then quarterly we come together and we discuss how we are doing in terms of our mission and our vision. And from the family's perspective, not from the professional's perspective, we're really very interested in checking in continually with the parents. And during these quarterly meetings, we try very hard to not get stuck on minutia, not to hear about complaints or small ideas or tasks or jobs that need to be done, because there's another meeting for that, another place for that. We really try to have create a culture of big picture thinking, of checking in and making sure that we're going in the right direction, and most importantly, if we don't feel we are going in the right direction, we change directions. We're all about being nimble and flexible and experimenting. I've spoken with a lot of families who have started their own experiments in Jewish education across the country, and I found something they all have in common is their desire to be flexible, to not be afraid to fail, to their willingness to run experiments that involve their own children and their educators, and to check in frequently to find out if everyone feels that these experiments are working and if they're part of the overall bigger picture of moving Jewish education in the right direction for their families and their communities. Also, what we've tried to keep in mind is that this is a community approach. We're not just interested in our own X number of families, but how we could possibly impact the entire community. Again, it's about being involved in the big picture and not getting too stuck in the minutia.
Thank you so much. I would like to pose another question for the panel, specifically in the process of getting to parent engagement. What are some of the challenges in getting from involvement to engagement? I'd love to start with Pam.
I have found some of the challenges in getting from involvement to engagement are the myths and stereotypes that people hold of the different stakeholders. So parents might hold of the administrators and Jewish professionals, and the Jewish professional stereotypes and myths they might hold of parents. In my capacity as someone who's been involved as a change agent in Jewish education, I've attended many a conference, and I'm often the only parent, that's my primary job as parent and change agent as parent, in the room. Most people are stated professionals, and I've heard a huge amount of myths and stereotypes about parents, a lot of blame put on parents. At the same time, I've been in meetings with parents, and there's a lot of blame that they hold in myths and stereotypes about Jewish professionals. So I would say the biggest challenge is to question those stereotypes, because when you dig deep, when you unpack those stereotypes, I actually don't think they hold true at all. The stereotype of parents are superficial, they don't have great values, they don't really care about Jewish substance, and then the stereotypes of Jewish education professionals, all those kinds of myths and stereotypes, if we unpack them, if we truly examine them in an honest atmosphere, I think we could go a lot farther in partnering together for change.
Yeah, I know, and you were jumping to the other side.
No, we're gonna go.
I'm just going to add to what Pam said. I think that that's a really compelling framing that you put forward, and I'm going to speak a bit, and I think critically, from the perspective of a day school administrator and the way that professionals, the way we think about the role of parents. I mean, it is somewhat reflecting on my own personal change. So I might speak from with the zealotry of a convert in a certain way. I think some of the attitudes you mentioned are handled kind of subtly. I can't tell you how many times people will come to me and say, the hardest part of your job must be dealing with all of those parents with their concerns and complaints. I have to tell you, I've lost a lot of sleep over my career in almost 25 years as a Jewish educator. I'm hard-pressed to think of a time I really lost a night's sleep because of a parent. The reason is, I think a parent's anxiety or concern about their child when things aren't going well is appropriate and should be expressed. But the greater issue is if we choose to think about them again in those sort of terms, and those customer terms, then it used to be something I see in a doctor's office: children learn what they live. If we actually project that is the model and where we limit parents to that sort of role, then as professionals, administrators, we're going to reap what we sow in that regard. And I think we need to take the leadership as professionals to be able to in ways challenge, but also embrace parent leadership like we're talking about today, and like the voices I've come to know during the past couple of years throughout the day schools and Parent to Parent and so many others in New York. I think it's a very exciting opportunity, and ultimately one where our schools are going to be better if we're not looking at parents in a utilitarian way, merely as customers, or coming with that anxiety that they might bring a kvetch. Let's talk about how we take those ideas, and I think, as Elisheva mentioned, not just look at them locally, but how do they speak to our larger school, and if we embrace those voices that way, that's going to be a very powerful agent to improve and increase the power of our schools.
Thank you. I guess I want to echo. I want to say two things. One of which somewhat echoes what Pam and Ed have been saying, which is parents are already acting with even more commitment than faculty to the day-to-day delivery of the mission, because not only are they not receiving cash for being there every day, but they are putting cash in, but also, while the professionals are putting their life's blood and their life's work in it every day, the parents are putting their children in it every day, right? We're all in. We're in the tank for our kids' education.
Skin's in the game. Skin
is very strongly in the game. So, and one of the things that we've seen is that when faculty or administrators or educators think, I am committed to this educational refinement. This is important to me because I care about this, but this is a Mandarin thing. This is just me and my little PhD in Jewish education thing. But the regular people out there, the parents, they don't get this, they don't understand about it. They're almost always wrong. And when they think they need to dial down the key mission-focused content to please parents, they're almost always wrong. What they almost always need to do is dial it up. Because the parents are there because they want it. They picked it, they had choices, they could have easily gone someplace else. The only reason they're there is because they say, give it to us all the way. We want the good stuff for our kid. And we're willing to pay, and we're willing to put our kid at risk every single day on the school bus to get it. So I think that having confidence in the committedness and the seriousness with which parents approach this is really the first thing. The parents almost always want it at least as much as the teacher wants it. That's the first thing. The second thing is I feel like I need to really acknowledge an elephant in the room, which is there are just not very many people here who are male, right? If you are a woman and you look around yourself at the meeting of all the class parents, and the gender division there is not the same as the gender division in your school's lay leadership. If the board table is 60-40 men and the PA is 80-20 women, you have an engagement problem. Leave that there.
So we've heard really eloquently, there's two people dancing here. There's two sides here of the coin. You've got the professionals, the administrators, and then you've got the parents. And I think that the challenge for moving from parent involvement to parent engagement involves obviously both of them, and we've heard very eloquently about some of the challenges facing the administrators. Speaking from personal experience, I think on the parent side, there are some communities where the parents just might not be comfortable interacting with the administration, and if they're not comfortable interacting with the administration, then they're not going to come up with any ideas, and they're definitely not going to go through the process through which they need to go through to implement their ideas. Again, speaking from personal experience, there are some communities that are just not used to interacting with the school. Some parents might not have had good experiences with the school. Some might come from places where you only interact with the school when there's been a problem with your child, where it's just not expected. Co-creation is this new way of thinking, right, about the relationship between the school and the parent. And some communities just need time, maybe, or maybe need some more coaching to get to that place. Also, the second thing I want to talk about is identifying the parents who are willing to be the risk takers. I think Pam, you mentioned risk takers, innovators, people who are willing to be flexible and who are willing to sort of reevaluate on an ongoing basis is something that not all of us innately feel comfortable doing. There's a lot of work to do this type of what, for me, it seems like almost like a community organizing. You have to sort of stand behind your idea. You have to garner support for it. Sometimes you have to find funding for it, see it through. Sometimes you need to staff a program, right? Even when you put the program in place, you might not realize it's you who has to sort of be there to run it for a long time. But it's easier as you do it more often. It's something you can learn. I'm an attorney, been one for 13 years. As an attorney, I'm not really a risk taker. I am much better, I think, at identifying problems, at seeing where there are things that should be changed, but I leave it to the client to figure out how to change them. But over the years, I think I'm getting a little better. So I wanted to just put that out there. For those of you who look at, these great programs and say, oh, I couldn't do that. You probably can. I think you can.
I had a chance to talk to some of the people involved with starting the Shefa School, which is such a collaboration of many day schools. The idea that there's a community of day schools involved and they touch each other and they work together. And I think on the parent level too, a room like this where there's people from a lot of schools that are talking is a great experience, but that aspect of it is not so unique because in our shoals and on the street and in the kosher supermarket, people are talking together about what they share. Or at peach assemblies, there are a lot of opportunities. And I think that sense that there is a broader community with bigger picture goals, and that there are parents who live on the lay leadership side and on the professional side, and that across both of those kinds of work, people bring the commitment of their heart of parenthood and the commitment of community leadership. I think it's a wide range of kinds of conversations, and that's a great thing.
I get a tremendous amount of hope, or ruach, one of the few Hebrew words I've managed to pick up over the years, from the fact that there's so many people here and that you do come from different schools with different philosophies and different denominations in the Jewish faith. I think that's tremendous, and that the parent-to-parent initiative has grown, to become something like this, something so powerful. Sometimes it's really hard to find inspiration or energy in our lives. They're sort of busy and they're cluttered. But apparently we can all find the energy, and that gives me hope for change. And additionally, sometimes schools can sort of feel like isolated, like little islands, sort of adrift. If you have problems at a school, sort of adrift in the sea, stormy seas. But when you meet at a community like this, you're not alone. It's like an archipelago or something out there. There are other people that you can bounce ideas off of and try to get to solutions.
And I want to answer that question. I just feel somewhat compelled just to respond or to add on to one thing that Veronica mentioned, because it got me thinking. When you were talking about the vital stakeholders in a day school, that there are and the relationship or the dance between parents and administrators, or parents and professionals. I think actually in Jewish Day School, there's a larger ecosystem in which parents are operating. First of all, of course, there's students who are a key stakeholder, but on a relationship level that you may have in mind, to keep in mind that there's a board of trustees who may not have a direct interaction with parents, but is always interacting with them because of the policies and the values and the larger mission, to the extent that it's being expressed well or not on the board level. And then also larger community in the Jewish Day School world, the larger Jewish community, funders and federations and sources of that sort. Those are all valuable, but sometimes we'll forget when we're working in a school that there's this larger ecosystem that we're all living in. And I suppose when with my parent leadership, the parent leadership I work with, when we were actually working together to think about that larger community and how we interacted there, we actually the partnership was all the more vital. The optimism I feel is not only with the experience in this room and that we've seen here the last 2 years, but that there is something in terms of, I think, the empowerment of parent voices in general, partially cultivated through social media because of sites, and whether in a more general sense, but in the Jewish community, a site like Kveller, or blogs like your own, Sarah, that people are, and parents are starting to look at their voices not as individual voices, but as essential, or creating platforms for larger community voices of parents. If that in fact is true, then schools have an opportunity, but also responsibility of professionals and lay leadership to understand parents as stakeholders, as a group, as a fundamental stakeholder, not individual ones, but as a group themselves. That would be a radical shift in our day schools, and I think a really powerful and positive one if we can make that shift. But I think we're moving in that direction because of fortunately, the grassroots work that's being done from people like yourselves.
So I get hope from the fact that I think in the secular world, ideas like design thinking, co-creation, looking at community organizing, starting with I don't want to say customers, but starting with whoever we're building an organization for, starting with where their needs are coming from, and then building mission and vision and strategic outlook from that. And I think that's starting to influence the Jewish education world, and I'm very excited about that. I hope that we do more of it, and I think that my personal obsession is that parents learn more about the fact that Jewish educators are talking about these exciting things, and that the parents, I think our roles are to help drive change toward that, to really make big change instead of incremental change. And so I think that's just beginning, and I'm excited about that.
Really like the way you talked about partners and sort of framing the mission and the vision, getting to the mission and the vision. How much do you think the parents should have an input in sort of creating that mission and vision for the school? Is there a role for them in that?
Yes, particularly on an ongoing basis. I mean, there are important mission, and generally I found that parents will necessarily choose a school or consider a school for their children when based on an established mission statement and the extent that's being expressed and practiced in a meaningful way. But I view the implementation and the development of a mission and its full expression as a daily process. And so that was the big change for me, was looking at parents and relying upon parents really as partners in that and testing that. And so that's what I find really exciting, and it actually gave me a great sense of security on my toughest days. And when really tough and big decisions and strategic decisions were going to be made, and when it's also being discussed with the board of directors or trustees, to be able to look and say, well, I've talked with a group of parents and thinking about the future of the school and thinking about what's right for all of our children. This is what they believe. And sometimes the first response is, well, that's just so-and-so talking about his child or her daughter. And I was always, when we got to this point, to be able to say, no, it's not just that. It's not that narrow interest. And to feel with some security with that there was an elevated discussion, there was a forum in which in which we all pressed each other, despite our tendencies, not to go local, but to think about what's right. Then that's what was the ongoing process in which mission and vision was actively evolved, and parents' role could be and should be really integral to that. I don't think culturally that's the way it is. It's not the way I was trained as an educator. Yeah, and I can think of any number of my mentors yelling at me right now. No, really, feeling as though that it's a combination of either being just starry-eyed or being too deferential to parents, and I just don't agree.
I want to build on that. I think that it's really important that parents play the role of helping administrators refocus on the mission and vision, and even saying, hey, take a step back. Because sometimes it's your professional job and you're running things day to day and you're putting out fires. It helps to have big picture parents who say, are we online? Are we working toward our mission and vision here? So I think that's a very helpful role, and it's a true leadership role, and it's a co-creation model that doesn't quite exist now. But I think we should move that.
Aspire that way, yeah.
Yeah, I was thinking a little bit about this question of sort of professional training. What your mentors say? I think that it's a little bit of 100 years ago, it was very routine for everywhere for parents to be closely involved in their children's Jewish education. And I think that you see now still in small communities, like the work that the Institute for Southern Jewish Life is doing now, where they'll send circuit riders to tiny towns where the only Jewish educator is a parent in the community who may have very little formal Jewish education, in many cases is not Jewish, right? Who wants that child to have some in-person Jewish education, is delivering on a daily basis, and is getting some support and mentorship from a professional who shows up every 3 months for a weekend, right? Those are huge commitments from parents. In the last 50 years or something, what we got was a professionalization of professional school leadership, which is great, because all of a sudden Jewish educators got this professional training and this status and this idea of field workers, right? But it's in a way, it's just a little bit of rebalancing to say we can keep those elements of professionalization and still actually reclaim a little bit of the energy that comes from the not professionally trained leadership who are nonetheless committed to mission. And the other thing that's related to the same question of how our educators train is the importance of thinking with teachers about the educational commitment of parents. And I want to just give a shout out here. We talked about this a little bit on the phone, there's a book by Sarah Lawrence Life book called The Essential Conversation, which was really really important for us in our school culture of thinking about what does it mean to say the home and the school are in partnership in the education of the child. That book became a touchstone for faculty to think about how they talk about the child's education and about their mission and vision for the children's education with parents. And as the teachers and the educators began to think more about the role of parents as partners, in fact, they stimulated parents to come forward as partners. And so I think that that's a place that professionals actually have control over it in a sort of roundabout way, which is that building more of the culture in the operational life of the school that greets parents with a face that says, you are my partner. And the result is that parents do step forward as partners when you do that.
What was the name of that book? I think I know
It's called
somebody.
The Essential Conversation.
I think I know somebody who used to read it.
I know a lot of it. It's actually a great book, and all of her books which talk about the culture of schools. They're sort of portraits of schools, but The Essential Conversation, which is really focused on parent-teacher conferences. But it uses that as a jumping-off point to say, what is the kind of conversation that parents and teachers have about education? And it's a great book.
We had that in our recommended reading on the table. That's right. Yeah.
Any other responses or comments from our panel before we turn to questions from the
It might be a question I put forward not only to the panel, but maybe it's something that can be integrated throughout the day, is for parents to be able to move towards and become elevated to parent leadership, as we're trying to discuss it. What do you need? What sort of resources and what sort of attitude, what sort of approach would you need to be able to accomplish that?
I also, just before we turn to the audience, want to make mention of something that sounds like it's emerging here. Irene and I had a chance, had over many cups of coffee, to talk about the role of the vocal minority We know who the parent complainers are in our schools, right? Many of us do, some of us do. And we know that their voices are very loud. There is another group, right? They are the vocal minority, but there are the rest of us. And the goal is really to take those conversations that are happening on the subway, on the corner, at the bus stop, in the grocery store, at shul, and to take those and elevate those conversations and bring those conversations from casual conversations between parents to conversations with schools, and really in that way shift the way that schools and parents are really in conversation with one another. How we take the complainers and turn them into something productive, but also how we look at that example and see past that, which I think is really to the heart of what you're saying, right? Allow it not to be about the individual child, but to draw some broader conclusions from that to apply.
So I'm not an educator, but I've been a trustee, and for a long time I was the address for complaints in our school. Like in every school there's somebody who's the person that they go to. Not me anymore, thank God. But there was like an 8-year period where like somehow they all funneled to me. Faculty complaints too, let me tell a whole other story. But parents who had a fetch and something was bugging them would come to me. And so I want to sort of answer in 2 stages. One is that there is a customer service orientation that says a complaint is a gift. And the first, when something is wrong, it's an opportunity for you to say, what is the problem that's causing this complaint, as opposed to what are the words of the complaint, right? Because if the complaint is my kid's teacher yells too much, what you're really saying is, why is this teacher not in control of the class? What is the problem in the classroom? Is there a problem in class makeup? Is there a problem in teacher support? Is there a problem in the teacher's life? What's going on? Who needs to address it? How do we need to get there? And the complaint is like the ripple on the surface that tells you there's a rock, find the rock, right? So that's the first piece of it. But the second piece is, I think, although I'm generally skeptical of the way that everything and everybody will be transformed into the Messianic era by social media, I think that this is a place where the sort of users not customers orientation is helpful to us, because it says, if I'm the person who gets that complaint and I start by saying, what's the rock underneath this ripple? The next thing I can do is go to you and say, I want you to know I found this rock. And then you become my megaphone out to tell 15 different people, you know, I went to her with a complaint that my teacher was yelling, and when she came back to me, it turned out that here are the 5 things that have changed in my kid's classroom. And I can really leverage the fact that your complaint has been addressed in a more fundamental way than the level at which you brought it to me. And I'm going to get benefit out of that in the end. So that's a place where I think we can both learn, if we're oriented to thinking about the rock and not the ripple, we can both address the complainer, but also we can really transform complainers into advocates and into people who perceive themselves as change makers in a good and valuable way.
Yeah, so going with the example of the yelling teacher and the complaint about the yelling teacher, I hear that, and what I hear, and I think we don't do this enough, we don't try to figure out what the needs are of our families. I hear a family that says, my family needs a loving, nurturing teacher. Instead of hearing the complaint about the yelling teacher, I hear that this is something we need to work on. This is a need our families have. We need to create a culture of more loving, nurturing, kinder teachers, however you want to frame it. So I guess, instead of drowning out the complainers, I have to say I have a problem with talking about parents who are kvetching. To me, it seems patronizing. Because maybe they don't have the tools, but perhaps also maybe they weren't asked in a structured format. Like in community organizing, people have the role of going to the family and trying to discover what the needs and pain points and difficulties are of each customer or family in their community. And so if we don't create a format, I come from consumer brand management marketing business. We had something called new product development. In the beginning stages, we called it the fuzzy front end of innovation, right? We went and got to know our customers. We went into their homes. We tried to understand what their needs are, and then we tried to figure out how we could make their lives better. So I don't think we do this in Jewish education at all. Personally, I think like if we created a new product development format, a way, and trained each of our schools on how we know and understand our customers better and how we align that with what our vision is, then I think that complaining or kvetching would dissipate because there actually would be a format for parents to express their concerns.
Any other questions?
So my comment, Alicia, this goes back to something that you said, but I think there's another element to that, which is many parents don't say anything at all, right? Because Alicia, you made the comment about, often parents are at least as mission focused as the teachers. So I actually think that's a little simplistic, right? I think lots of parents don't choose the school because of the mission. I think they choose the school because of geography or because they're Orthodox, so they're not going to send their kid to the conservative school. I mean, it's very often they just happen to be sending their kid to that school, and both parents maybe work and they're very busy and they don't have time to think about what are the ins and outs of their child's day, and they're just happy somebody's teaching their kid and taking care of their kid. So to some extent, when many parents aren't coming to the school really with any kind of reaction, then those of us who want to speak up automatically look like people who are complaining.
I guess the only thing I want to say there is I think, again, in the elephant in the room area, there's a big difference between schools on the one side and on the other side of the Orthodox liberal divide. Because I think that in the Orthodox community, increasingly, there's a strong enough expectation of physical education that many parents there, those schools become the public school for their child effectively. They're the community school of default. I think in the community schools and liberal denominational schools, that's not as true. But I think that it is important to think about the dogs that don't bark, right? For sure, and to think about what are people saying that they haven't brought to you. And that, I think, goes to what you're saying, that there are a lot of people who have views that they may not have articulated. I think that even in those communities, parents know when they don't like it. And a person who knows when they don't like something really actually knows when they do like something, but they haven't thought about it. It hasn't been forced into their attention until they didn't like it. But that doesn't mean that they wouldn't rather talk about what they like. And actually, sometimes when, our school's been accredited now twice over the 18 years of its life, and the self-study portion where you go in and talk, and there's lots and lots of parts about the school that you study, and one of the goals is to have a mixture of parents and trustees, other people on those committees. It's a fantastic experience because you pick people whose job is not to say what they think, and you ask them, would you please say what you think, because it's important. The life of our school depends on your telling me what you think. People just rise to the occasion. So maybe one of the things there, Deborah, is to think about what are the opportunities in the way that Pamela's talking about for offering people language and moment and occasion for saying what they think, so that you get that experience from them before it reaches the point where you've already disappointed what they think and you're left with only complaint.
On a practical level, we know that there's so many conversations going on. There's so many complaints that go on just around the coffee and around the glass of wine that don't arrive, that don't get voiced. We're all complainers on some level. We're all kvetching on some level. We need to somehow figure out how to get those ideas, before the school in a constructive way. Some schools have, breakfast. Like I wouldn't call the principal up and complain about something that I talked to my friend about last night. But if I go to a principal's breakfast, or if there's some other forum where I run into the principal, then it's a little easier for me to sort of voice those complaints. So I think that there are certain things that a school can do to make it easier for those who aren't speaking up to speak up.
And I'll just, take it from one little angle, but to build on this about the importance of a forum. Elvis Presley's third album was called 50,000 Elvis Fans Can't Be Wrong. And I've always found that instructive in in considering when issues come up. First, I never have a problem with the complaint, but sometimes using the term complaint can really be diminishing. For parents to have critiques, and it's interesting how my parents say, I don't mean to complain, Ed, I don't mean to complain, Rabbi. I said, well, I'm not going to take it as a complaint, but you have a critique. You've got a problem, you've got an issue, you've got a concern. So that's good, let's talk about it. And also, and it's good, and if it's a concern or a problem or an issue with your child, then let's talk about that. More often than that, that's solved technically and individually. The benefit, I think, of what you're all discussing here about creating a forum where parents can discuss these things, that forum for leadership is one when we can all reflect together whether an individual concern is actually more of a communal concern. Because if it's suddenly 50,000 fans who feel a certain way, then we have to look at that as an aspect of culture or mission or values of the school. And that's where it's, I think, requires a different leadership discussion than a single parent discussion. And so it's not, we often get tied into, well, about the tone of this, is somehow, well, a parent's just complaining. Actually, a parent's bringing a critique. It's important to listen to that and embrace it, and let's see if it should be solved on an individual level or solved on a communal level.
I would, so not everyone, different people are comfortable with different kinds of parent leadership, but I would venture to guess that you have amongst your parents, maybe the ones who aren't coming, but who are on your list of parents at the school, who are entrepreneurs, who are innovators, who are risk takers in their own professional lives, who are community builders. You have to reach out to people like that, and they can take on leadership positions and galvanize others. It's not a great fit for everyone, though, but they will lead. They will, and there are, there are.
Is it self-selecting?
Well, you have to put out the call. You have to recruit. You have to say, I know a lot. I mean, I'm not a PTA person. Okay, I don't but my daughter appreciates the parties in the class beyond belief, and I really appreciate that. But I just would not be good at that. Running those things, and I know where my strengths lie. So I guarantee you have parents who are like that. Maybe it's a matter of creating a new group and not calling it, parent partnership group or something, calling it something new and describing it in a different way and looking for a different type of skill set amongst your parents. But they exist because, we all know that.
I wanted to also say, I think that the culture of asking parents only to be involved, right? If you say, I need people to sign up to do 2 hours at bake sale. So that's an actual, it isn't asked for cheap unskilled labor, often from people who have huge other professional and family demands on their time, right? And in general, I think that we would be disturbed and appalled in terms of our treatment of professionals if we said to our administrators, oh, why don't you recruit teachers who are slaving all day, want to see their kids at night, and then stay up late trading paper? Why don't you ask them to just give us an extra 2 hours to hand out cupcakes? They'd be like, dude, I'm a professional. I'm like, guess what, folks? Me too, right? So I think that and there again, there's a gendered thing, right? If your primary time commitment now is parenting, it must be that actually you don't have anything that important to do. All right, let's just be and I think that there's a lot of parent associations sometimes is where we locate that particular dysfunction in our schools. And so thinking about how to actually recruit, how to think about what are the more engaged relationships that we want our parents to have, and recruit those into the parent association. If you have a person who's up on the 35,000-foot level in terms of mission engagement, who's your parent association president, and you say, here's what I want, I need to pick up my phone and talk to this dad and this mom about the fact that we are in a, whatever high level thing it is that you think is doing that, there's actual engagement. There are 2 administrators volunteering their time, and we need 3 parents who actually have some marketing and some finance skills. This is coming through the parent association. I don't really care whether you come to the book group night. If you have time, fantastic, it's going to be great, but actually that's not what this is about. Can I get your help there? That's talking to people in a serious way that respects them as people with expertise, that respects them as people who have mission concerns. If you're not doing that, the fact that they don't want to spend 2 hours working for free giving out cupcakes, it's great if they have time to do it and they love it and it's social and they see their kid, but if they don't have time, I don't blame them.